Hey everyone, welcome to Hereticals. I'm Chris, also known as Atheist Pastor. Welcome to what we call Different Opinion. Let's talk. It's a show where I guess the premise is we have conversations. It's not about a debate. It's not about winning or losing. It's just about having a conversation. Today I've got actually for the first time this will be the first time I've had a one-on-one conversation with this gentleman. We've spoken a couple of times, and I think he even came on our Christmas stream. He gets a little bit active in the chat every now and then, but this will be our first face-to-face conversation. So that being said, Otangelo, welcome to Hereticals, mate. How are you doing there?
Yes, Chris. Hello, hello everyone. I'm fine, thanks. And you?
So I guess I'll say good morning to you. That's the funny thing about the world. It's early in the morning for you, late at night for me. So hopefully you've had your coffee, and I'm going to have a cup of tea soon to wind down. So it should be fun. So look, it's initially we had sort of discussed whether we're going to do a debate or something like that, and in the end we just sort of said let's just have a conversation. So I'm happy for you to kind of lead the conversation, and I guess is there. I'll just get some housekeeping out of the way quickly first. If you've got any questions, either tag Hereticals or you're probably better tagging at the Nevermore Tavern, and he will see it. Probably he'll be keeping an eye on, that's Jay, he'll be keeping an eye on everything more than me. If you do send a super chat, we will read it. Look, like anything, we just ask everyone's respectful. This isn't the typical atheist yelling at the debate sort of thing. This is just a conversation. So that being said, Otangelo, I'll leave it in your hands. What would you like to talk about?
Yes, thank you for having me here, Chris. It's an honor. And for who doesn't know me yet, I am Swiss Italian. I live in Brazil. I'm a Christian for 36 years. I am active on the internet, on Facebook, and on YouTube, defending intelligent design, the Christian worldview. I have two channels on YouTube. One is Intelligent Design Academy. The second one is The God Talk. And I have a virtual library where I collect and make public the information which I collect to defend my worldview. The name is reasonandscience.catsport.com.
I was going to say, I think you're almost a bit of a celebrity in the atheist community by now, aren't you?
What do you mean by slippery? I mean, of course, there is always opposition, and there are people which prefer to.
Oh no! I'm paying you a compliment, saying that you're well known.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So look, I'll throw it to you. What would you like to talk about? Where would you like to start? Obviously, that we've probably both got things we want to talk about, but I'm happy to sort of let you, if there's something you want to talk about, and we can kick it off there.
Yes, as I know from you, you are not so invested in intelligent design, debunking science stuff, and so forth. I think you are more rather on the philosophy stuff and theology, things like that. So
probably not so much. Probably not so much philosophy. I don't really touch philosophy. I'm a historian, but I know a bit about intelligent design only because I used to be a proponent of it back in my Christian days. I was a young Earth creationist.
Okay. So I really don't know how to better my volume here. Maybe I can talk a little bit louder if that helps.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So
I can hear you good. I don't know if in the chat, if just let us know if there's any issues. But
okay.
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think, Chris, that in order for you to construct a worldview, and I think that there are basically two in regards of origins. One is where a god or gods in plural exists, and the other where no gods exist. And that is basically the entire dispute between theists and atheists and agnostics. And I think in order for you to have a sound epistemological framework and make a sound investigations, in regards of this quest and issue, a good basis is to have some understanding on science, theology, and philosophy. And basically, I have invested much and spent much time to educate myself in regards of scientific issues, because these are frequent talking points which come up. And usually
So
my
if I can ask a question, so as far as qualifications, just so I know exactly where we're at, when you say you've invested and you've studied, we taught just you've studied just sort of on your own online, or have you
yes,
actually formal qualifications?
yes, I am as my profession is machine designer, so
Okay.
it has to do with design, but I have no diploma in any science field. But I mean, there is much criticism that, oh, you are not a scientist, so how are you qualified to talk about science? And I think this is not a sound refutation, because today we have easy access to information through the internet, and we can download science papers and books. We can read them. We can educate ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think having a diploma today isn't meaning much in regards of that. If someone is qualified actually to make a proposition and defending a worldview or not.
Okay, so this is the first thing I guess we'll disagree on. Now, I will say that yes, people can educate themselves. We certainly do have access to a lot more information, but you design machines, for instance. Now, I assume that you have got some kind of formal qualification for that profession.
Yes, I am formed as machine designer.
Now, if I were to apply for a job with you and say, Otangelo, I want to design machines, I have got no formal education, no formal study on it, but I have really, really looked into it on the internet. Are you going to give me a job?
Well, I think the comparison isn't much, I would say, sound, because um, the issue and the crux or the differences which theists and atheists have amongst each other is actually the interpretation of the evidence of what we see in the natural world. So, if you tell me, Chris, you have an understanding how a machine works, even if you didn't have a formal education in the profession, then you are qualified actually to make some inference of the origin of a machine or whatever mechanical device we are talking about. And I think the same goes in regards of biology, geology, physics, and so forth, these faculties that we usually investigate and talk about in order to make some inferences.
So should I quit my doctorate now?
No, I'm not saying that. Of course,
Yeah.
if
No,
you
no.
have,
Tongue in
course,
cheek.
I mean,
I,
of course,
I
if you
see.
have a qualification, then the better. I am not putting that in doubt. But saying
See.
you are disqualified to talk about machines because you don't have a diploma as machine designer, I think that criticism or point is not sound.
I guess the point that I was going to get to though is that the reality is now I have a basic understanding of some things. Science isn't really my background. I defer to people who know a lot more than me. But certainly, I can see the value in someone who's got a formal education and formal qualifications as being more of an expert than, I guess, a lay person.
Yes,
You know,
sure.
I
Maybe
don't
a
think there
little
can
bit.
be any there. It's
No, of
because
course,
it's
I agree
just
with that.
even what you will learn, I guess, at a tertiary level, and a lot of this, not only just the being able to read papers, but actually the skills that go along with that. But I mean, I actually wasn't going to go there with you. It's interesting that you went straight into a defensive mode, because I'm happy to say that you have probably done a lot more research on young Earth creation than I have. I used to be a proponent of it when I was a Christian, only because, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't. Old Earth creation doesn't work in a Christian worldview because it
No, there
negates
are
the fall
proponents
and sin.
as much as old Earth creationism, in as much as young Earth creationism, they're theistic evolutionists. And I think that that entire dialogue and dispute about if the Earth is old or young isn't actually leading us to the either God or no God hypothesis. And I think,
I
um,
agree.
yeah,
I agree with you there. Look, and the reality is there either is a God or there isn't a God. And
right.
there's probably nothing that either you and I can do or say that's going to determine that either way. It's certainly, I'm happy to say I'm not an expert in that field. I would say that you aren't an expert in that field, although I acknowledge that it is something that you've read up and studied on. But I would say that that's probably a discussion that when people with formal qualifications, um, can't come to a conclusion, that's probably not something you or I are going to get to. I guess what I'm more interested in from my point of view is, all right, let's put that to one side. You're a Christian and that's your worldview. So I guess that's what I'm more interested in. It's
Right.
how you can, if we were to take everything off the table and say, okay, let's say that for the sake of discussion, there could be a God. I don't believe that there is a God. I'm an atheist, and I don't think anyone would. Well, I'm an atheist by anyone's definition. I actively believe that there is no God, and
Hmm.
I even am happy to say that I accept that as a belief position.
Hmm.
So we can sort of
So
not
would
don't
you
need to cross that bridge.
so
Um,
would you say this is a belief a position based on blind, reasonable, or unreasonable faith?
I would say it's reasonable faith. That's what I've based it on. I
Yeah. So
acknowledge
you
that,
need
that,
good. So
that
you need good
I
reasons
acknowledge
actually
it
to
could be.
hold that faith, right?
Sorry, I missed a bit there. Just so everyone knows too, we're actually not talking over each other because we're literally on different sides of the planet. There is about a 2 second delay between when we talk. So sometimes I'll start talking and Otangelo will start talking at the same time, and it seems like we've both started. So sorry, I did miss what you were saying, but I guess the point I was trying to get to is what I'm interested in is, out of all of the faiths, why Christianity? What is it about Christianity? Where's the truth in Christianity? Why Yahweh and not Zeus or Thor or Allah, or why Jesus and not just the Old Testament? Where do you get that from?
Well, I think the central issue of the Christian faith is the person of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are several lines of debate going on about the historicity of Christ, if he really was God, if he resurrected or if he didn't resurrect. And of course, all in regards of all these issues and questions, there are answers. Like the historicity of Jesus is well established outside of the Bible. There are many
Where
authors like Josephus and so forth, Tacitus, and many others. There are over
where,
40
where, in,
different
where in
sources
sorry,
which
I
actually
will I will stop
mention
you there.
Christ.
I will
Yeah.
stop you there because this is the area of expertise that I can speak into.
Mhm.
No, Josephus doesn't mention Jesus. Josephus mentions Christians, that there are Christians who follow a prophet called Jesus,
Mhm.
but that's it.
Right.
It's mentioned in passing, and no one's denying there was Christians. Like everyone knows that in the year 100 AD there was Christians. But that
Right.
doesn't actually prove. And look, I'm not a. I think that when it comes to historicity, it's not a black and white issue. I think it's grey. I think that um, the character of Jesus, as described in any of the four Gospels, is not likely. I think it's probably someone who may have existed that I guess legend has been built around. But I wouldn't. Yeah, it's grey. But no, Josephus definitely does not mention Jesus, and even if it did, uh, Antiquities was written in 97 AD, I believe. Whereas if the biblical account were accurate, Jesus would have died sometime in the 30s, early to mid 30s.
Right. Right. I mean, that Jesus, the figure, is a myth. This is something who Richard Carrier and some other defend, but like Bob Bierman, for example, which is an atheist, he positively confirms that Christ is a historical figure, that it is well established amongst scholars. So I think that gives support actually to what we as Christians believe.
Hmm. Would you agree that Muhammad was a person who existed?
Yes, probably yes.
Does
Yeah.
that prove Islam?
No, I mean the quest of Christ, as I said previously, if he is the one that he said to be, namely the Son of God,
Hmm.
if he is actually God, and if he resurrected and in that way demonstrated and confirmed his claim, that is of course quite another and different and more profound issue. And I personally, when atheists raise the question of the resurrection, I like very much to bring up the Shroud of Turin, which is something which I've studied for considerable time. There is a link which I can provide to you, which you can eventually put in
You
the
might
side
not.
chat
You
for
might
people.
not want to go down that road with me. That's well and truly established as a fraud.
Well,
It dates to the Dark Ages, I believe.
yeah,
It's
that's something which
I don't
I
even think it's 1,000 years old.
yeah, this is something which I categorically reject, and I think only people which have actually not studied the shroud still make that claim. And I think a central issue is, and the quest is, how was the image on the shroud made? And there is no, I mean, they have hardly tried to reproduce the shroud in all its details, and they have literally failed. It is not a painting. It is not something which can be proven to be man-made. That it's a big mystery, and that is recognized.
So if I could produce an image similar to the Shroud of Turin with my face on it, would that be evidence that it could be manufactured?
Well, they have actually tried. There are some scientists which have investigated in all kind of manners how it could have been a forgery from the Middle Ages, but there are severe problems with this proposition. I mean, I don't think we want to spend our entire conversation in regards of these details, and for that
Oh no,
reason,
because I'll
yeah,
tell you right now, I completely
yeah.
reject what you're saying about the Shroud of Turin, and I'll say that as someone who is actually a historian. Um, yeah, I will tell you right now that's been well and truly debunked. There are Christian apologists who will put out what I'd call very sketchy. A lot of the stuff that you would probably send me in the side chat, I've seen. And what you've got to remember too is I started as a Christian. I was doing a Bachelor of Theology with the intention of going into ministry. That's thus the Atheist Pastor thing. Um, I never wanted to. I was quite happy, quite very, very, good with where I was at as far as being a Christian. I did not want to be an atheist. I did not want to deconvert. Um, but looking into all this kind of stuff, I mean, to me, it was fairly obvious. But no, the Shroud of Turin is that's probably not the hill to die on.
Well, the only thing that those which reject it stick to is the radiocarbon dating from 1988, which is very strongly disputed. And again, I say if you are starting to look closely into the
The
science
which
and the
the
whole
which sorry,
thing,
I what sorry I didn't catch what you said. From what was it from 1988?
the radiocarbon dating, which claims that it is a forgery from the 13th century or so. This is hardly disputed, and there are good reasons to actually put in question that dating which was performed in the 80s and in the 1980s.
So all right, so I will address where the evidence is that it is a fraud, and to give a bit of historical context. What the Catholic Church used to do is they would go and sell indulgences. It's a way that they made money. So there was a big trade and a big market in the Middle Ages for holy relics. Now, whether that was to touch a relic or to see a relic, traveling ministers or priests would go to different towns with something, say like a Shroud of Turin, and people would pay and they would be blessed. And basically they were also buying their way out of purgatory, and, so they were absolving themselves of their sins financially, which I think you and I would both agree having read the Bible, that's not how it works. But it was a big grift that was going on through that period. It's what actually led to part of what led to the Reformation, with Martin Luther saying, "Well, hang on, no, I've read the Bible and this isn't what it says," and thus the questions being nailed on the door. So there was a lot of things. You've got the spear of destiny. There's multiple splinters from the cross, and nails, and all of which have been shown to either not be from the time or to be fairly obvious things that you can debunk. I don't think you and I are going to get anywhere, because obviously we're not going to agree on the Shroud of Turin. So I'm happy to move on to
Yeah.
if there's something else that I guess that you would like to mention or to bring up.
Yeah, you said that you basically probably slowly drifted away from the Christian faith until becoming an atheist. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, Chris, that isn't a good justification to be an atheist. I mean, you need positive evidence that we can exist without a creator. And you've said that you've
No,
not
no, I don't.
studied science. And I think in order for you to be able to substantiate the claim that the natural physical world is all there is and that no God is necessary to explain our existence, you need actually to study these faculties like biology, biochemistry, physics, and so on. And if you haven't, then you have actually no basis to say, I think that the natural world is self sustaining because of this and that.
So I could get a physicist on right now who would happily have that conversation with you. There's only so many things you can study. No. Look, I'll make it very, very easy. The reason I disbelieve is because I think that if there was a creator, there would be evidence, or they would have left some form of evidence that they existed. And I haven't seen that. So therefore, I don't believe that there is a God.
Right. So I think if you are starting to actually dig a little bit deeper into scientific issues, then maybe you will be able to actually see fingerprints of intelligence which were required in past action to instantiate what we see in the natural world. And with this, I mean the precise clockwork of the universe, which is necessary in order to have life. And that is in regards of the origin of life, where information is necessary to instantiate the molecular machines, which are proteins, and the cell, which is a factory in a literal sense, and even biodiversity and all the different mechanisms which also are based on information in order to have complex multicellular organisms. In all these things, we see that information is required. And of course, then it comes to the question, how is information, and with information, I mean instructional assembly information and fine tuning, how is that instantiated and best explained? Is an intelligence necessary or not? And I would categorically say, yes, absolutely. And that intelligence had to be far more intelligent than we are.
And I disagree with you. And I say it's not my area of expertise as far as molecular biology, things like that. That's not what I'm a historian. It's
Yeah, so
I've
I
studied theology
encourage
and
you.
history,
I mean, if you want to know what the truth is, and I think
but
we
but, uh,
both
but it's hang on. But the thing is,
we
it's
both
none of what you've
want
said
we want
actually
to be
leads
honest.
to. Yeah, but sorry, none of what you've said actually leads to the existence of a God. All it is your understanding of science, which you have conceded, is based on your own studies. It's not at a tertiary level. I've got a guy who was on the channel with us a couple of days ago, Matt, who's doing a PhD. He's a physicist. I've got Jen, who I'm not sure exactly what her qualification is, but she's a scientist as well. And these people would disagree with you, and they're the ones who are qualified to have those conversations. And it would be dishonest of me to sit here and say, well, you're wrong on everything you're saying, because really I don't know. But you and I can't have this conversation because neither of us have got the qualifications to have this conversation honestly. I mean, if you want to have a physics conversation, we'll get you a physicist. If you want to have a conversation with a molecular biologist, then we need to get you a molecular biologist. Because the thing is, you can have these conversations, and these people have studied at a higher level than either of us, and they've come to a very different conclusion.
Yeah, I think in the end it comes to the interpretation of the evidence. I mean, if you have a diploma or not in regards of any of these faculties which you mentioned, um, that gives you a degree of understanding how things in the natural world work. But an entirely different question is, how do we best explain all these phenomena? And in order to do so, what you basically need to think about is, what are what is the signature of intelligent action compared to things which non-intelligent action is not able to instantiate. That is basically the difference: intelligence versus non-intelligence. And what I see is, and I don't need to be very much I don't need to have much knowledge about this, and neither do you, is to understand that certain features that we see made by us and which then we see analogously in the natural world, they require a designer. And that is basically then a logical inference
Like
which you
what?
make to a creator.
What can you give me one example of something that requires a designer and how you know it requires a designer?
Well, I am a machine designer, and I know, for example, if my boss comes to me and tells me, listen, I need that you invent a machine for a specific purpose, then I will
Mm-hmm.
have to sit down and think about problem solving. How can I
But
instantiate
we're not
design?
machines though.
Sorry?
We're not machines though. And I assume you're not comparing yourself to God.
No, let me just make the analogy so you will
Sure.
understand where I'm going with that. So I have to sit down and actually think about, I can make the drawing of that machine with precise sizes, the materials that are required, with the subunits which will interact with each other, in order then this machine to be the building plan to be sent to the factory where machine workers can read the plan and then actually make that machine uh, based on the instructions contained in that blueprint. Now, if I am asking you, when you see a blueprint with specific instructions to make a machine and how to assemble it, and you don't have any information whatsoever about the source of that blueprint, and you have two possible competing hypotheses. One is that an intelligent machine designer made that blueprint, and the other is that random chance by lucky accidents instantiated that blueprint. What do you think would be the better case adequate proposition and inference based on that?
See, I think this is the classic God of the gaps argument.
No, I am
Because
asking you,
I,
if you see
I,
if you
I
see
have no
a
idea.
blueprint on the table, even intuitively, do you come
Yeah,
to the
but
conclusion, oh, somebody made it, or would you say it was just a lucky accident that some ink that was thrown on the paper, and somehow it made all the drawings with precise instructions how to make a machine?
have
Which
you
of the two
have you got the
propositions?
blueprint? Have you got the blueprint? Because they're not comparable.
No,
Have
can
you got a
you
blueprint?
no
Hang on,
no
hang on, hang on, hang on. No, hang on, hang on. Let me answer. Have you got a blueprint from a God for creation?
Well, what we see in nature is actually instructional assembly information stored in genes and chromosomes, and even
That's
there
not
are
a
over.
blueprint, though.
Well, can I finish, please?
Yep.
And we have over 40 different epigenetic codes. And what the information which is stored in DNA and in chromosomes is actually instructional assembly information which dictates the precise assembly of amino acid chains, which then will fold into 3D form and become molecular machines with specific functions. And in order to have the right sequence of nucleotides, to have a functional protein, you have to select the right sequence amongst a huge sequence space. And just to give you an example, in order to have a right sequence of 100 amino acids, which would be a short protein. The average size is much longer. It's about 300 amino acids. You have a size of 1 to 10 to the 130th power of different possible sequences. And amongst all these, just one is working and functional. So you have to ask yourself, is the origin of that information better explained by an intelligent source which instantiated the right sequence from the get-go, knowing what the outcome would be, or was it just a random shuffling which then by luck instantiated just one protein? Remembering that the smallest living cell has about 1,350 proteins, each one with the size of average about 300 amino acids.
So I have asked myself that question, and my conclusion is that natural selection, random chance, is more likely than a creator God.
Yeah, so the problem here, Chris, is that science has discovered that molecules left on their own, if they would have been left on their own on a prebiotic Earth, rather than polymerize and become functional polymer strands and amino acid strands and then molecular machines, they would simply randomize and disintegrate into the asphalt. They wouldn't
They, but
complexify.
they obviously haven't found that, because you and I are here having a conversation.
Yes, but the
If, if,
question
if,
is,
that, if
how
that was the
did that
case,
happen?
we're not here. And I don't think that is the case that they've found that. I think you'll find that that's in Christian science. And when I say that, I'm not talking about scientists who happen to be Christian, but more in the young earth apologetic style. And look, a lot of it,
No,
if
not at all.
you can throw me the academic source,
Yes, I can
a
do that.
secular academic source,
Sure.
I am
Yes.
happy. I am happy to pass that on to someone
Hmm.
who actually has a
Yeah.
background,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
let them explain it, because I'm not a scientist. You can throw all that stuff at me.
Yes,
I'll
but
be
Chris,
upfront. You could be talking complete gobbledygook. I wouldn't know the difference.
was there something which I just said which you had some kind of difficulty to understand because you are not a scientist,
I
or
didn't
was it
understand.
fairly?
I didn't understand 90% of what you were saying. Sorry, no, that's not true. I did understand what you were saying, but as far as testing it and the evidence, and you saying there's this study and that study, I, I have no way to verify it. If you want to send me the studies, I'll
Yeah,
pass it
sure.
on to someone
Yeah.
who understands that. I'll pass it on to Matt or
Hmm.
Jen, and let them have that
Yeah.
conversation, because they are people who
Sure.
do have the qualification, who have looked
Yes,
into it,
I'll be more
and
than
have a
happy
completely different.
if you want to invite those people to your channel. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation
Well,
with any of them. It
maybe we
can
set up
be
a
a
science chat with
physicist.
you and Matt.
Yeah, it
But
can be a
so
physicist, it
can
can
I
be a biologist, whatever you like. No problem.
can I ask you a question? Because I think one thing you and I do both know about is the Bible. So let's talk about the Bible. Who's Joseph's dad? Joseph, the father of Jesus. Who's his father?
Yes. Okay.
No,
Yes, it's his
that's my
father.
question. Do you know who his father is?
Joseph's father? No.
Okay, so there's two options. You can either go for Jacob or Heli, because there's two different lineages, and I'm sure you're aware of this. There's two different lineages, one in Matthew and one in Luke, that come from different sons of Solomon. Of King David. Sorry, one coming from the line of Solomon, one coming from the line of Nathan. They can't
Right.
both be right. So which one, and how do we determine which one is correct?
Yes, I've studied that, Chris, and I just don't have that in my mind right now because it's some time that I have looked into that. But I'll be more than happy after our conversation to send you a link. There is an explanation in regards of
Oh no, no,
the.
I don't want to link. I thought this might be something that you and I do have some, because look, my scientific knowledge is virtually nothing. I can bring Jen in for that conversation, if you want, but something. I mean, as a Christian, you have read the Bible. I mean, if you're saying that, yeah, you're a Christian. I mean, and you spend a lot of time arguing apologetics online, so I would assume that you would have to have a good, sound biblical grounding.
Yes, as I said, I have an answer to what you just brought up. I just don't have it out of my mind to give you an answer right away because my focus is really on scientific stuff. But
Mhm.
I know where, I've studied the topic and I'm come to the conclusion that there is an explanation. and I can give it to you after our conversation. I can send you a link where I
Sure.
have actually an answer to that.
Sure. So the look, I know the standard apologetic, and I'll just tackle it quickly, is that it's one's from the line of Mary, the other one's from the line of Joseph. That's not likely accurate because both were written for, or both are written at the same time in the same language, and essentially it was. I won't get into it, but there was basically an argument between whether Matthew or Luke was going to be the canon for the Bible. There was potentially going to be a split, so they just put in both because most people couldn't read at the time anyway. But the thing is, I guess the issue, and this is part of what started me down my journey, is there is a lot of errors in the Bible now, both contradictions, but also there's a lot of historical errors. There's things that we can really look at, especially in the Old Testament, as far as the historicity of the Old Testament goes, and characters such as Moses, Abraham. There's a lot of issues there. A lot of what we do know about the region and the time doesn't add up. Even things like the flood, none of that adds up. So I guess
Well, I
how
well
do you
I
respond to things? I guess the historicity of the Old Testament.
well I mean. I think that Noah's Ark has been found on Mount Ararat. I have met Philip Williams. We had even actually together a debate on modern day debate in regards of that finding on Mount Ararat. I can give you the link, and I have done a more than a month a study on this topic, also on the controversy where people claim it is a forgery from local peoples, which brought up wood up to the mountain, and they did set up a stage just to fool the Chinese team, the Nami team. And I've actually even spoken to Don Patton, which was the major opponent of that and claimed that it was a fraud. I have recorded the conversation, and anything that he brought up was just hearsay. He had not anything which was empirical proof demonstrating that the story which he brought up, that this finding is a hoax, backing it up empirically. And there are videos out there. Philip Williams has been in the structure. It is on 14,000 feet on Mount Ararat. It's a huge structure. It's broken up in
You do
two
realize
parts.
you do realize people have been there and it's a rock formation.
No, it's not. I'm not talking about the Wyatt formation. This is a different site which I'm talking about. It is close on the top of the mountain on Mount Ararat. It is a wooden construction with pitch on walls. There are huge side walls. It is a ship, okay, and they have found much pottery. And right now there is an archaeological investigation with Azor underway to make a scientific expedition and investigation of these
So
two structures on Mount Ararat.
I'll ask you this question because this could lead down an interesting path actually. How do we know, or how do you know that it's Noah's Ark? How do they date that?
Well, as I said, first of all, there is, I mean, this is a very difficult scientific endeavor because this is a military zone on Mount Ararat, and there are they need permissions and so forth. But this is all being provided, and there is a team of Turkish archaeologists and American archaeologists which are teaming up to make a scientific investigation of the structure. This is being, I don't know exactly where they are right now because it's a secret, because there are people which are trying to avoid this to happen. But I suggest that you look at the videos. They're very impressive. And I mean, the question is, how did all this wooden structure below ice on 14,000 feet get there?
But how do you know it's Noah's Ark? Let's assume, and I just going to say
Well,
I
of
don't
course,
believe that that's the case. But
yeah.
let's assume. Okay,
Well,
we're
of
going to
course,
assume.
I don't.
How do
Of
you
course,
know?
there is no. Of course, there is no writing there. This is Noah's Ark or something like that. That we could know 100% sure. But I mean, the videos are very impressive, and sometimes the videos they tell more than
I've seen
scientific.
some pretty impressive videos about reptilians, though. I mean, that doesn't prove anything. It's I
No,
guess
I
what
am
I'm
not
asking
talking
is
about proofs. I mean, the question always, Chris, is what is the most reasonable inference based on the evidence at hand. One thing that can be excluded in that case it is that it is a movie set, a stage, something which has been set up by local people. This is simply ridiculous. It has not been proven to be true. I've investigated this, and you have actually not one but two structures of a broken up ship which has landed on the top of the mountain. And in 1840, there was an earthquake on Mount Ararat, and that structure broke up in two parts, and it did slide down on a crevasse. And one structure is at 14,000 feet, the other is a little bit higher. And I have counted in all the videos which I have seen over 150 different wood planks, and they are deep buried under huge amounts of ice. It is very difficult and dangerous to get there. And if you tell me that this was a movie set up by locals just to fool some Chinese ark searchers, that is just a ridiculous proposition.
I'm not saying anything about that. What I'm saying to you is,
No, I'm not saying you are
and
saying that. I am
no,
saying
no,
that this was the
but
claim made by
you
many
but
naysayers.
you have taken a leap. So I'm just going to we do have a £5 super chat. So I will just read that out. And if you want to respond to that, you can. I do want to follow up, I guess, with my original question. Godless Scummer, even if you find an ancient wooden structure on Mount Ararat, it's a huge leap to say it's Noah's Ark,
Well,
which I would probably tend to agree with, because if it is, let's say that let's just say, and I don't think there is, but let's say there is a huge wooden structure that appears to be a boat on Mount Ararat. How do you know that it's Noah's Ark? How can you date it? How can you tell?
yes, as I said previously, archaeologists, they are doing a scientific investigation to come up with scientific data in regards of the age of the wood there. There is also a lot of pottery there. There are remains of animals there. There is hay there. And of course, I cannot say I know that it is Noah's Ark. The question is, how do we explain best that structure up there? And of course, the hoax proposition has been made since the structure has been found in 2008. There was a huge controversy in 2010 with the Navy team, which made a movie on that structure. And of course, you can always say, I don't believe that it is Noah's Ark. And I mean, this is something which most probably will end up saying. But I think that if you actually think about how did that structure get there, and it's not a small structure, it is a huge structure. There are wooden planks with over 20 meters of size. How did that get there? How was it buried under huge amounts of ice? Why are there huge walls of wood with pitch on the wall?
How is any structure built on? Structures are built on mountains. You do know that. And
I
ancient
know.
structures, especially in that area in Turkey. I mean, we know some of the oldest ruins we have found are in that. I mean, Göbekli Tepe, for instance, that dates back, I think, to 10,000 BC. So, I mean, that's, there's 12,000 years there. We know that area certainly had a lot of activity for probably 50,000 years happening there. We know that there's old structures. People do build on mountains. Certainly it's the high ground when you've got invading armies is a safe place to be.
Well, not if it's at
It's a big leap to get to it's
not
the
well,
mythical
Chris.
boat.
Not if it is at 14,000 feet. Philip Williams, which visited the site, he almost died up there because there is very low oxygen. It is at a very high level, and it is deep buried in ice. It is very dangerous to get there. You can be hit by stones. It fall down all the time. So it is. I think it is not an easy explanation to say, well, someone built something up there for some reason. But I mean, if people want to believe that, they are entitled to do that. I think it is very powerful evidence that this is actually Noah's Ark.
Yeah, I think you're making a big leap to Noah's Ark. So let's, I guess, get to Noah's Ark, because I mean, so you are, when we say, so you're a young Earth creationist. So you believe in about 6,000 year time period. Would that
Yes,
be fair
I
to
am a
say?
younger creationist. Yes,
Right.
yes.
So I guess a couple of things that pop to mind first. I mean, obviously we've got things that date back substantially further than 6,000 years. But what's happened, the biblical history doesn't match with what we know about the actual history of that region. So how would you look at that? I guess even around the time that just before, or King David. So when according to the Bible, the Israeli Empire was at its peak, the evidence actually shows that Egypt controlled a large portion of that land. We know that the Assyrians were next door. We know that the Babylonians were there as well. The evidence indicates more than likely that yes, the Israeli or the Jewish people were there, but they were much smaller and nomadic. They weren't as large as I guess their stories would indicate. And these are things that we do have a lot of evidence for. So when things don't add up, I guess how can you justify that from a Christian worldview?
Well, for example, King David was a figure where there was no archaeological evidence that he actually even existed. And that was put in question until archaeological evidence actually was found. There were inscriptions, the House of David, and this actually
Yeah,
became
no,
then
no
hard
doubt, David.
evidence
Yeah,
of the historicity of David. And I think there are many folks which were only mentioned in the Bible, Chris, and people, archaeologists, they doubted that these were actually even folks that lived there a few thousand years back. And then excavations have subsequently just confirmed what the Bible says. And also Exodus and Moses, there is good evidence that the Exodus actually happened.
there's no evidence.
Yeah, I can give you, and you can put it also in the side chat. There is evidence actually. There
Cool,
are
give it to me. If you
papyrus.
can give
Yeah,
me the evidence, I'll be very happy because the evidence
sure, I can
indicates
give it
that
to you.
yeah,
Yes, I'll put it in the
there's
chat.
nothing. I mean, the Egyptians weren't shy in writing their history. With the
Yes, I will
exception
give you.
of
Yeah,
the Bronze
I
Age
don't think.
times.
Yeah, I don't think we have time to go into the details, but I put here the link in the private chat. If you can provide it in the side chat so others can look into it, that would be nice.
All right, so I'm gonna quickly look at this while we're here. So okay, yeah, I'll put it in the side chat. But yeah, that's okay. I wouldn't, I definitely wouldn't encourage anyone to look at this as any kind of. I'll put it there. No, there's no evidence. I mean, the Egyptian records are numerous. There's no indication of millions of Hebrew slaves or any archaeological evidence that they were there. There's no written evidence that they were there. There's nothing from the surrounding nations at the time indicating that there was a mass movement of this or an exodus of people in the area. There's zero evidence for it.
Hmm.
There's zero evidence that Moses existed. More likely, he was a legendary figure, in the same vein as a Hercules. But there's acts, and considering that area is probably one of the most researched. If there was ever going to be any evidence that he existed, we would have found it, especially with the numbers of people we're talking about. I mean, I think it was 2 million people who were let out of Egypt, but there's no evidence that they were ever there, no evidence they ever left, no evidence that they ever wandered.
Well, I just provided the link. Look it up, and maybe we can have a follow up. And then, if you think that the information in the link isn't accurate, we can discuss that.
Yeah, I definitely think the information in the link isn't accurate. I mean, a lot of it's just Bible verses.
Well, this is just prejudice which you're showing now, Chris. I think you can only say that after you actually read the information, then you can make up your mind. But saying in advance before you actually read the information, that is
I've
prejudice.
I've just I've got the link up here. I've clicked the link. I'm reading it. Murder of male newborns. Moses' archaeological evidence in Hebrew inscriptions. Yeah, well, Moses is mentioned in Hebrew inscriptions. Yeah, okay. Zeus is mentioned in Greek inscriptions, but it
Well,
doesn't actually
I
point to
encourage
evidence.
you to actually have a look, have a read, since these kind of things is what backs up your atheism, Chris. Then I would take that information serious and look it up in order for you not to fool yourself.
No, I've looked at it. I've read. There's no. Um, yeah, there's no evidence. It's just Bible verses.
I
I'm
mean,
looking at it.
I'm sorry to tell you, Chris, but this is about you need at least half an hour to read through the information, and after looking it up for half a minute, saying it's not compelling information, that just shows me that you're biased towards the source and the information. So I encourage you that
But the source
I
of
mean,
information is the Bible.
tell it.
I'm looking at it
I mean,
now.
tell it. I mean, tell it to
It's
me after you read it and investigate
just
it,
read
and then
it.
I mean
I've
that's
just read
what I
it.
always do. I mean,
It's
if
talking
an
about
atheist,
yeah.
Chris, if an
I've just read
atheist
it.
provides me a link
I
before I
speed
give an
read.
opinion, I actually read it and I investigate if the information
Tangelo, I
is
just read it.
true.
I have just read it. I've got it up in
Okay,
front of me right now. I've read it.
okay,
I'm looking.
all
I'm
right.
looking at it now. It's I've read the message page one of one. I haven't watched the videos. I'm not going to argue that, but I mean it's talking about it's Israeli inscriptions, Jewish inscriptions. It's got some of the Sinai inscriptions that mention Moses, but that's not any. Those aren't dated. Those aren't actually that isn't evidence. That it's not any form of evidence apart from to say that there were Hebrew people who believe that Moses was a person, and we know that there's Hebrew people who believe that Moses was a person because they wrote a book about him. Like we've got evidence that they believe or they made the claim, but that there's no archaeological or no evidence, and like just providing a link that's got a couple of very vague inscriptions and then just goes to biblical verses. That isn't evidence. That is not evidence in any. Like if I handed that in as evidence for a university, I'd get failed because it's not. It's not. It's not that it's not sufficient evidence. It's not any. It's not evidence. Full stop. We know that they believe in Moses, but that
Okay.
doesn't explain the complete lack of any archaeological evidence in Egypt, any written evidence in Egypt, any written evidence in the surrounding nations that we know. I mean, we've got letters from 2,000 years ago, written between different rulers who conversed with each other. 2,000 years ago, 2,000 BC, from different rulers who conversed with each other. So we have an idea. We're not that blind on history and to what was going on. The issue is what happened in history doesn't match with the biblical account. What it is more likely has happened is during the Babylonian exile. That's when what we would now call the Old Testament was written. It was written by the Jewish people who were in captivity and who were getting ready to go back to their homeland, and certainly some was written after the return, after the exile. And that's why there's a lot of those themes about the mighty coming back after being enslaved and being exiled from their promised land, with the great heroes of legend. But then there's also a lot of things that are I won't say stolen, but there's certainly a lot of common themes from other ancient religions within the area at the time.
Right. Chris, can you have you put the links which I provide to you in the private chat in the
Yep.
public chat?
Yes, I
Can you do
have.
that so others can have a look as well?
Yeah, no, I did. I did. I think there's been the conversation has been going. But yes, I did put it in. So it's the reasonable
Okay,
science.
thank
So
you.
I put it in. If you have a look, it was 10:49 my time, but that's fine. I'm even happy to put the links in the description underneath.
Yeah,
It's
maybe in the description. Yes, that would be
and
fine
and
too.
and I'm even happy. I might even make it the next video I do. I might even do on what you've
Okay,
got there,
Doc,
and have a look at it.
you can make a video on the information, and I'll be happy to address it afterwards.
Yeah, sure. But I guess look, the point I'm making is there's a lot of gaps and there's a lot of holes and there's a lot of um, I guess a lot of stretching that you need to do to determine that Christianity is true when the evidence actually points to it's not, because we can prove that historical events didn't happen. It's as far as the scientific stuff, I'm going to leave that argument to people who are better qualified than me. But certainly, they will. People who are better qualified than me will argue that no, that isn't the case. One thing I can talk on is I can talk on the Earth not being 6,000 years old, and we know that because we've got an archaeological record and an anthropological record. I guess how would you explain Neanderthals?
Well, that doesn't bring you to the no God hypothesis. And I admit there are gaps in the young Earth model. I am fully aware of it, like the starlight distance probability is something which I read into the literature, which proposes that it is possible to explain it with 6,000 years. I don't think so. I have not seen good explanations. So I am admitting that there are gaps, there are open questions, and there are things which are difficult to reconcile. But I am a young Earth creationist because I think that Genesis is God's word. It's God's revealed word. And I think that God knows better when and how he made the physical universe and planet Earth. So if he reveals us that it was about 6,000 years ago, then I go with it. Now you can tell me that I am gullible, but as a Christian, I take the Bible and God's word seriously. I think everything there is true, that the historicity is true, and so that is a huge factor which I take into consideration. And at the same time, I openly admit there are difficulties to explain some things, and I can live with that. And in the same time, if you propose that the universe is 14 billion years old, well, there are problems with that too. The Big Bang problem has the Bang model has many problems, like the horizon problem, the flatness problem, and the inflation, which is not well explained, and many other problems. So we have problems on both sides. So in the end, it is just basically a matter of let's say taste or flavor, whatever.
Yeah, look, it's one thing I will agree with you on is Christianity only works with a young earth model because you need to have the fall for there to be the redemption. So there has
Yes.
to literally be a Garden of Eden. And
Yeah.
for me, that's actually proof that Christianity is false because we can determine certainly more than six. I'm not going to go into the whole 14.5 billion years. Once again, that's for the scientists. But I guess and incidentally, anyone who's got questions, get them ready because we'll go to a Q&A in a second because we are getting close to an hour. So just make sure you tag either myself, the Nevermore, actually tag the Nevermore Tavern in, or if you do a super chat, we'll see it and that will definitely get read. But Neanderthals, I mean, Neanderthals are the most obvious from, I guess, a Eurocentric perspective. We know that Neanderthals existed. We know that there was a lot of them in Europe. We can even genetically see that most people who are European have anywhere up to about 4% Neanderthal DNA as part of who they are. So I guess how would from I guess your point of view, and I'm not asking for the scientific explanation. I'm just asking, I guess, you, Otangelo, in how do you reconcile Neanderthals with the young Earth model?
No, I mean, I go with the scientific evidence. There is no doubt about it. I'm not denying it whatsoever. I simply think that these are probably humans which had some genetic deformation or entropy or something like that, and I don't think they were apes. I don't think that Neanderthals whatsoever give robustness to the human ape common ancestry assertion.
So, would you agree that they are a different human species?
No, I think that they had probably some genetic deformation, or there was some genetic entropy, something like that.
Okay. Sorry, so I'm just trying. So you would just say that they're just deformed, like humans with a deformity, essentially.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Actually, yeah, that we can go with this, because then that obviously the people with that deformity will pass that on to their children and so on. You would agree, yes?
Yeah.
I think we agree on evolution here.
Well, yes, I've never denied evolution, actually, Chris. I mean, the question is, what is evolution? And in regards of genetic change and adaptation and microevolution and genetic entropy and so forth, I am fully in line with that. The big issue is if common ancestry is true, and if the tree of life is true, and if we are all the product of just one common ancestor about 3.7 or 3.8 billion years ago, and if
Mhm.
biodiversity can be explained by evolution. And I put a big question mark on these two propositions. But that evolution happens, there is no doubt. That is a fact. So yeah.
Okay. This is good, actually. This is that wasn't the answer I expected, but it's an answer I'm happy. I think it's an honest answer too. Actually, I'll I'll you know I'll give you a lot of credit here, Otangelo, because I think what you have said, I think you've been honest in what you've said. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't always agree with how you've come to certain conclusions, but I think you've been pretty honest. But let's talk about. Okay, so it's. I mean, Neanderthals are the most popular, but we know that there were many variations of different humans. So we've got say the Denisovians, for instance. That's another group. So if we just to keep it simple, we'll use I guess what we are Homo sapien, Homo Denisovian, and Homo neanderthalis. So we can agree that at some point in history, these three groups of humans, because they are a form, all of them are a form of human, existed. And there's deformities that are, or a genetic change or a mutation that has occurred that's then being passed on along the lines. But for them to be human, we would have to agree that Homo sapien, as we are now, the what was previously referred to as Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, and Denisovian would have had a common ancestor.
Yeah, I mean, human evolution, Chris, is a big mess. And the out of Africa hypothesis has been challenged by findings in recent times of um, uh, remains in Greece and other parts of the world. So there is no consensus whatsoever. And I
Well,
think that many,
there absolutely is a consensus.
yeah, but that
Absolute,
has been, it
there
has
is
been,
absolutely a historical, scientific,
but
anthropological, archaeological consensus.
yeah, but it has been challenged by recent findings in Greece and other places. I think, if I'm not wrong, in Russia as well. So, and I think that most of these findings they are actually apes. They are not. They are not the link between humans and apes.
Well, technically, and we will disagree on this, but we're all apes, which I know we're going to disagree on. But no, I mean, it's even in the Indonesian islands, there's, and a lot of this, see what you're referring to, and I don't know the exacts of it, but Russia, I know there was another species, but I think there was up to about 12 different human species that we know of. There was even hobbits, which I think was sensational in an Indonesian
Yeah, in Flores,
island.
they did find
Um,
hobbits. Yeah.
yeah. And I guess the point I'm making is, and it sounds like we do have an agreement on human evolution being a thing. I guess what I'm assuming you're saying though is there was nothing before humans. So would you say Homo erectus, for instance? Would you say that that's a common ancestor?
I am not sure about your question, so I'll pass on that.
Okay, that's fair
But I
enough.
don't. But categorically, Chris, I'm saying that I don't believe in the entire human evolution story that we have a common ancestor with apes. I don't believe that. I believe that we are a special creation made by God in His image, and that we are distinct to any kind of species in the animal kingdom.
Okay. Look, I think on that note, you happy to if we have a few questions from the audience?
So, if you have questions from the audience, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. So I guess Jay is in the background. So Jay, if you want to throw up any of the questions that have come up, I only saw the one super chat. So if I have missed any super chats, I apologise. But we'll get Jay to momentarily sort of throw them up. I have seen. I guess there is a question from Polymathic that I have seen pop up, and I'm just gonna while Jay's looking for things. Why are we still evolving? I think that's actually a really good question.
No, I don't think that we are evolving. I think that there are variations of there is black people, there is Indians and so forth, but this is something which is based on our genetic backup, which was preloaded that we could have a variation.
So, okay, interesting point you made there. So, why do white people? Why are there white people? Why you and I? We're fair skinned. Why are we fair skinned?
As I said, I think that God made us inbuilt with the possibility to have variation in a small range, and that is what we see. That's why there are black people, white people, and Asian people, and so forth.
Now, your Swiss your Swiss background. Interestingly enough, the original inhabitants of Switzerland were the Celts. But 6,000 years ago, the inhabitants of England and certainly a lot of Europe, we've actually done tests, and we actually know that the melanin levels, our ancestors in Europe were as black as any African.
Well, they actually came from the north of India.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's yeah, there was a lot of travel, but and once again, that's actually these are things we can trace. We can trace the migratory
But
pattern.
you know what is interesting, Phil, is that Philip Williams, which went to see Noah's Ark, he said that he discovered this not because he was an ark searcher, but he was making a scientific investigation on human migration, and it was precisely the ancient human migration, which led him to eastern Turkey and to Mount Ararat.
Sorry, so human. Well, yeah, well, it's one of the Turkey. We know that there was a lot of human migration through Turkey. I mean, the Turks certainly weren't the original inhabitants of Turkey. We know that there were go back 2,000 years ago. There were tribes of Celtic people in parts of Turkey. It was a Greek area. There was a Persian influence. The Turkic
No,
people came down.
earlier, Chris, what he is saying is that by tracking the human migration of ancient times, that led him to the origin of all migration to eastern Turkey, to Mount Ararat. That there the migration started to all the world.
So hang on. So he's saying that people from Africa got there via Turkey.
No, I mean, I reject the out of Africa hypothesis. I think that
No,
the
no,
three
but no, no.
families,
I wasn't asking about that. I was saying, is he saying that the people who are in Africa now, their descendants came from Turkey?
their descendants came from one of the three descendants of Noah.
That doesn't match any.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can give you a link. You can look that up as well.
I can, I can,
Then
I
you
can
you
give you
will understand
scientific.
what I
I can
am.
give you scientific papers and books. I've got books on archaeology and anthropology on my shelf, academic books that I can give you that will disagree. That I would say probably hold a lot more weight than a link. But anyway, Jay's here, so Jay's got questions, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I got quite a few of them here. So let's go with well, because some of them are grouped together. You know, Steve had like three of them right in a row, bang, bang, bang on Young Earth, and then I got a couple from a couple other people.
Steve's usually really quiet, though. I mean, it's unlike Steve.
So let's see here. Let's go. Well, the first one was from Steve McRae. Where is the consensus challenged outside Young Earth creationism?
Well, first of all, consensus is something which is also always raised when there is no empirical scientific evidence of a proposition. But if just one scientist actually comes up with empirical data, then the entire scientific consensus goes out of the window. So I don't think that consensus is relevant whatsoever in regards of scientific questions.
Okay. Let's jump on to this next one here. Once we're going to stick with this one just because a lot of these just happened, and then we'll get to some other ones here. For young on a Young Earth creationism again from Steve McRae. How does YEC explain the heat problem of millions of years of radiometric decay heat that had been squeezed in the last 6,000 to 7,000 years?
Yeah, I've not studied that, so I cannot answer it.
Okay. Steve McRae, inflation is commonly accepted as the resolution to the horizon problem, Otangelo. Why do you ignore that?
Yes, there is no explanation how inflation stopped. There are many different problems. I can give a link and you guys can look it up. But inflation is just something which has been made up. It hasn't been supported, and relevant issues have not been explained. Like inflation transitioned to the normal expansion afterwards. How did it stop to the right expansion rate after inflation? There was no mechanism there, and it could have simply retracted back to the singularity. That is a big problem. Inflation isn't supported whatsoever.
All right. Remember Sammy Jenkins. How does Otangelo say he agrees with science of evolution, then completely deny it?
No, I am very clear in what I am saying. I believe that adaptation is a scientific fact, and with adaptation, I mean that even when life started, life had to have inbuilt mechanisms to be able to adapt to the environment. And this is life essential. And if these adaptive mechanisms were not there right from the beginning, then we wouldn't be here having this conversation. So I think in a big part, adaptation or microevolution is a pre-programmed or preloaded mechanism like heat shock proteins. And in a very small part, there is evolution with natural selection and gene drift and gene flow. This is irrelevant to explain biodiversity whatsoever. Now, the big issues and the divergence between creationists and proponents of evolution is in regards of if common ancestry is true and if the entire biodiversity and organismal form and architecture can be explained by evolutionary mechanisms. And I think even science has moved forward and recognizes that the gene-centric view is wrong, and there is much more into it. And we know more than 40 different epigenetic codes which are also involved in constructing multicellular organisms. So that has to be explained. Where did
really
that
quickly,
information come from?
If I can jump in, like I said before, this is not. I've got no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm not. I got nothing either.
Are you happy if someone were to quickly come in and respond to that?
Sure.
Jen, who's a regular on our channel, I've just seen her pop up in the background. She can speak to that. You're welcome to say no, because I don't want you to feel like we're not ganging up on you or anything like that. It is a friendly conversation, and I know Jen will be respectful, but I can't answer to what you've just said. The history stuff, to an extent, the evolution, yeah, I can. The rest I can't say.
Okay, before you start, Jen, remember we do have other questions to get to also.
Yep.
We do. I just want to respond to the horizon problem that Otangelo was bringing up, and his response to inflation. We know a mechanism for inflation because we know dark energy exists. In actual fact, a recent paper released about white dwarf stars has actually shown some good insights as to the mechanism of dark energy, which helps with the expansion of the universe and for inflation. But aside from that, you don't need inflation to solve the problem. Recent studies from WMAP have shown that the universe isn't as homogeneous as the observable universe isn't as homogeneous as what we first thought.
You're really quiet there, Jen.
Extrapolate.
Something
Sorry, that's because my microphone's over here because I'm an idiot. Do I need to start that again?
How can we trust your science if you can't even work a microphone, really?
Oh, yeah, just because I can't work a microphone doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. Recent studies
continue on from where you were.
The recent studies with WMAP have shown that the universe isn't as homogeneous as we first thought. And if you extrapolate that out to a universe that's larger than the observable universe, that whole problem of the horizon problem is very, very minor indeed. So we only need a small mechanism somewhere way back in the early universe to allow for the homogeny that we do observe, because it's not as great as we first originally thought. So in Otangelo, the horizon problem isn't really a problem.
Okay.
Well, I think it is because
but I just told you it isn't. It isn't. The scientists agree that the horizon problem isn't a problem. There are certain small things for us to figure out in the mechanics of how dark energy works, for the mechanics of why there is this discrepancy in homogeny within the universe. But it's agreed that it's not a big problem. It's not a major issue. It doesn't stop the Big Bang from being the thing. And you're aware that the Big Bang isn't the start of the universe. It's just the expansion of the current universe that we live in. It's not the start of the universe.
So what is the start of the universe, Ian?
We don't know.
What I'm thinking is this could be a more in-depth conversation for another time. I'm glad you answered that, because I didn't understand anything anyone was saying there, because I don't do science.
Can you give me half a minute? Just a quick quote.
Absolutely. Go for it. Yep.
Okay. This is from Dragan Slavkov, Antimatter, Gravity, and the Universe from 2019. He says, our current understanding of the universe is both a fascinating intellectual achievement and the source of the greatest crisis in the history of physics. We do not know the nature of what we call an inflation field, dark matter, and dark energy. We do not know why matter dominates antimatter in the universe and what the root of the cosmological constant problem is. So there is actually a problem.
Okay, you're quoting something from 2019. What year are we in now? Science doesn't stay the same like the Bible does. Science changes. Science learns new things. We have better understandings about dark energy now than we did 2 years ago. We have the more recent data from WMAP, which has given us more information about how the early universe was. So whilst when science talks about we have a problem in science, it's not that it's an insurmountable problem. It's just something we don't know yet. That's when we have a problem in science, it means that we have something that we have to work towards a solution for. We may never get a solution for it. For example, we may never know what is the start of the universe. We may never know that. The universe may not even have a start. It's quite conceivable that the universe is infinite, or that that time just has no meaning when you go back to the very early times of the universe, because we can't know anything shorter than Planck time. We cannot know anything shorter than Planck time, not without a full understanding of quantum gravity, and we just don't have that. So our knowledge is lacking in places, but just because our knowledge lacks in places doesn't mean we can go, oh, God. That doesn't equate.
Can we go to therefore nature?
To the formation of the universe? No, we can't. We can't go back to before Planck time, which is a fraction of microsection.
Can you then say, we don't have an explanation to that problem? But
yeah, I can. I can say I don't know.
Can I finish, please?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So can we then say, science doesn't have yet an explanation, but when the explanation will be found, it will be a natural explanation? Because that would be a naturalism.
More than likely, any explanation that we'll find will be a natural explanation, because every explanation that we've had for everything so far has been a natural explanation. I'm not ruling out a supernatural explanation. We can't say that there couldn't be a God, but just because we don't know something doesn't mean there is a God. You can poke a God in there if you want, but that doesn't prove a God. That's just your belief.
Neither does it.
You can't prove a God.
That is also just your belief.
Well, no, because we have evidence for the Big Bang. We have evidence for evolution. We have everything in science is based on evidence. And I should shut up now because you've got other questions.
I was going to say I'm going to have to interrupt here because we do have other questions and super chats to get to.
See, this is why we have Jay here, because Jay keeps things sensible.
So if Jen and Otangelo, if you two want to have this discussion, we can set this up at another time where you guys can actually talk about this. We're more than willing to facilitate that for either one of you.
Sure.
But we do have more questions and that we need to get to. And then, like I said, we got some super chats for the end of it. So, Kimo Maki says, how does he reconcile evolutionary thought with Augustine's original sin credo?
Well, as I said, microevolution is better described as adaptation and is a necessary feature of life. Otherwise, there couldn't be life. Life couldn't have survived right at the beginning. Life has to be able to adapt to the environment. So this is something which is evidenced by science and is fully in line with the creation model, that God created all that biodiversity right from the beginning with the capability to adapt to the environment. And even biology, we see in biology amazing repair mechanisms which had to be instantiated right when life began. And if they wouldn't be there, then life couldn't have even got off the hook. It couldn't have even started. So how do you explain repair mechanisms if there was not a God with foresight which knew that they had to be instantiated right at the beginning?
I have a question for you, Otangelo. If the Earth is young, how do you explain the heat problem?
We already went over that one. He didn't know. Steve dropped that question earlier.
He did. It must have been when I was moving back to me on the computer.
So,
I'm sorry.
All right. So Ted Frank says Ararat had a huge monastery on it. Is that what they think is the Ark?
No, the finding that I am talking about is on 14,000 feet high. It's close to the top of Mount Ararat, and it is a wooden structure. It's huge. It's broken up in two parts, and it's buried deep down in the ice. There are huge walls with pitch on the walls. They have found pottery and animal remains there, and it is proven to be an ancient pilgrimage place. People went there to pilgrim. So it means that locals, they probably knew of that site for thousands of years.
So,
doesn't
so
mean
you,
And
that's the boat.
it's actually even mentioned in Josephus. He mentions that the ark on Mount Ararat. So they knew it for a very
yeah, well,
long time.
that's in the Bible. That's why he mentions it.
No, it's not in the
Okay,
Bible.
so
I'm talking about Josephus. Josephus, he mentions the ark on Mount Ararat, that it is a pilgrimage place.
yeah, so yeah, well, because they believe that's where it landed. But why couldn't it be a structure? That's what I'm saying. If and I don't think there's wood up there. But why could it not be a structure? Why could it not just be a man-made structure?
Well, it was a man-made ark which landed on Mount Ararat, and that are the remains which are there.
But why couldn't it be a man-made structure? Why is it? Because it's a big
Well,
stretch to say it's a boat.
first of all, it is on 14,000 feet. There is very difficult to breathe there. Philip Williams, he almost died up there. It's very high on the mountain. It is a structure deep buried in a crevasse, and it is a huge structure. There are planks of wooden structures, wooden planks with over 20 meters of size. It is a huge structure. So that demands an explanation. And saying it is a movie set, that's just silly.
I don't think it's a movie set. But okay, so it's at 14,000 feet. Okay, there's actually structures and monasteries in particular that are at higher altitude in the world, at 16,000 feet.
Yeah, that couldn't be a monastery because it is inside of a crevasse, and we know from the locals that it is a structure which was on the top of the mountain, and with the earthquake in 1840, it went down the crevasse. It broke in two parts. It's deep buried inside of the crevasse under ice,
So
and there
the
are
ancient
huge
structure
wooden walls, and there are huge wooden walls with pitch on the wall. And it is a 3-floor structure, a huge structure. So
sounds like a
I
building.
suggest that you guys,
Sounds like a
I
building.
would suggest that you guys watch the videos, and then you make up your mind.
I'll watch the video and I'll do a response to it. I'll watch it with an open mind. But
Can I ask Otangelo which thing he's talking about? Because there was a wooden structure found at 16,000 feet, and there's a cave that was found at 14,000 feet that people declared unusual.
He sent the link, so I'll have a look at the one.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
it is actually a structure which is broken up in two parts. One is at 14,000 feet, the other is higher up. And as the locals, that was a guy, his name is Parachute. He did find that ark in 2008. He did find it based on information from the locals, and they told him that this structure was on the top of the mountain until 1840, and then there was an earthquake, and it ran down the crevasse, and it broke up in two parts. So it is buried deep down in ice. So it's not a monastery or something like that.
Yeah, things built on mountains will move. But
I mean, the locals, they would have known that a monastery was up there, and that is definitely not the case.
Not necessarily, because there's farms built on sites that are only a couple of thousand years old now. Babylon.
I think we will definitely have more information once that the archaeological team will come up with scientific data. What I can tell you that they found pottery there, which is from very ancient times, from the Bronze Age, and of course that demands also an explanation.
It's okay. So Babylon, you no doubt you've heard of Babylon. Massive, huge city not too long ago, and now there's farms on top of it. There was I think it was Richard II of England. They found his remains under a car park. People didn't know he was there. It's there's a lot of things that we can date a lot earlier than what that would have been. I mean, Göbekli Tepe, they didn't know it was there. Troy, I mean, it's they dug and found Troy where there was basically nothing there. It's the world is full of it. That's why archaeologists have jobs. But I mean, look, there's structures, there's monasteries that are built higher. I mean, just go to Tibet. There's the highest one is I think it's the Rongbuk monastery, which is at almost 17,000 feet in altitude. So it's high altitude's not a new thing. But anyway, what else do we have?
Yeah, again, I suggest that you look up the videos, and eventually you can make even a stream if you like on the topic, and then
I'll
discuss it.
Yeah.
Otangelo, what do you find to be the most coherent of all the atheist arguments?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question. The most coherent one. I think the problem of evil is not it is not an easy thing to answer. I think that the slavery thing is difficult to answer. I agree that, in my view, as a personal view, it could maybe have been pointed out more clearly that slavery is wrong. Some bring up the claim that God is hidden. I can see it from an atheist perspective, but not from a theist perspective.
Okay, and next one is what, on the other hand, what do you find to be the least coherent of all the Christian arguments? These are from Junk Shop Library, by the way. I apologize.
Is that for me or is that for Otangelo?
No, it's for Otangelo. What do you find to be the least coherent of the Christian arguments?
It depends what he means by coherent. Maybe he can clarify that.
I'd say it's probably like the commonly used apologetics, like precept, watchmaker.
Yeah, I mean, precept is more a method of bringing forward an argument. I would have to think about that. I have not thought about it.
Well, whilst Jay's looking for that, you're aware there's a coffee shop on a mountain in China that's 16,000 feet up, and it's part of a temple that's been there for probably 500 or 600 years. So,
no, I am not doubting that people have built monasteries and buildings on high altitudes. That is not a doubt. But if you see the structure deep buried in ice and the size of the structure and everything, then it's definitely clear it's not a house or a building or something like that. That's why I'm saying look up the videos and then make up your mind.
From Virillion, does Otangelo accept that he's made up of eukaryotes?
Yes, all my cells inside of my body are eukaryotes.
Okay. Godless Scummer, where is the peer review on Philip Williams' work? When I go looking for it, I pretty much just find articles written by you, and that's it.
As I said, Azor and Turkish archaeologists, they are preparing an expedition on Mount Ararat. And certainly once they have the scientific data published, then we will have more information at hand in regards of the age of the wood up there on the mountain, on the pottery and so forth. So it will take some time yet to have that information and so that we can advance in regards of that issue.
All right. Last question from Stephen McCrae. What study challenges the consensus that mitochondrial haplogroups L1, L2, and L3 do not have origins from Africa?
Oh, I don't know. I would have to look that up.
I understood that one. Yes, I'm getting better at this.
Dean Kruger for Otangelo, is lying for Jesus a sin?
Lying is always a sin.
And I think that may be the last of the questions I had. Let me just double check, make sure I didn't miss anything important and relevant here.
I think there was a couple of super chats.
Yeah, I've got them down. I'll save them for the end.
Cool.
No, I think that is pretty much it. If I missed a question somebody wanted to ask quickly, if you throw it in there, I'll try to get to it. There's been a lot of chatter, so I may have just missed it. There's been a lot of chatter in the chat.
And in all fairness, Jay is particularly old and can't keep up with these things.
Hey, I got my regular glasses on today, not my sunglasses. That tells you how my eyes are working.
Well, serious.
So I do have a question for you, Otangelo. You presented a link to your website for the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. If I put a link in the chat showing everything about Buddhism, does that make my Buddhism more right than your Jesus? Because it is on a website, it is proven, and it is actually more evidence for the Buddha than there is for Jesus. So doesn't that make my religion better than yours?
Well,
or more true, not better?
Well, Buddha, of course, nobody doubts that he is a historical figure, but Buddhism doesn't make meaningful propositions in regards of God's existence or not. And one big issue in Buddhism is reincarnation, if that is true. And of course, if that is true, then it contradicts the Bible, which says that we have just one life and then will be judgment by God. And if it is true, then the question is, what originates reincarnation? What instantiates it? I mean, I don't think that someone can claim that it goes eternally back, that we had no beginning as souls. So there are many questions here which would have to be clarified.
Well, there are many questions against your Bible saying it's not true, but that doesn't mean it doesn't make it true. This is this. I'm not going to go into this anymore because this can actually be a discussion in its own right.
Maybe this is a discussion.
Yeah, it could be a discussion in its own right. But I think that was it. Let me just real quick. I seen a couple things pop up here real quick.
I was going to say as well, we do have a Discord server that's set up now. So if anyone wants to jump in, it's an open server. All are welcome, as long as you're nice. So I think Jay will put the link to that in the chat soon. So if you want, if you're in Discord, you want to go and jump in.
You want to read the super chats while I go get that then?
Am I reading them or are you reading them? Because I don't have them up in front of me.
Oh, you don't have them up?
I think I saw there was 2 or 3 that came through.
Yeah, give me
I can't throw the link, can I?
Yeah, Jen, you can throw the link, Jen.
I can?
Yeah. You should be able to
Discord?
Yeah. You should be able to get the invite for it. All right, so the super chats, we got 3. 5 pounds from Godless Scummer. If it's very difficult to breathe up there because of the altitude, doesn't that make a huge issue for the entire Ark story?
Well, no. I mean, we believe that the Ark landed on Mount Ararat, and I don't know what the atmospheric conditions were right after the waters were up there and then started to lower. So these are open questions, but it doesn't mean that there is some incoherence there.
Jen, do you got that link? Or you guys still need to do it?
I already sent it.
Oh, okay. It didn't pop up on mine. I haven't seen it pop up yet.
It's already there.
All right. We got...
this is what happens when old people try and use the internet, Jay.
Yeah.
$5, Darth Dawkins. Otangelo, why are you wasting time with these dishonest atheists? They are known liars. And Darth Dawkins for $2. Why was Otangelo rude to me on Discord?
Well,
that's what I got.
Of all,
I can't believe he called me a known liar. That's horrible of Darth. I love him.
Yeah. First of all, I think the constant rant after having a conversation with atheists and starting to name call them isn't productive. If I have a conversation with Chris or Yen or whoever it is, and in the end of the conversation we still disagree with, I can live with that, and they are entitled to keep their opinion, and that's something then in the end between them and God. why should I go back and start ranting about how dishonest and how pitiful and whatever they are? I think this is not productive. And I've said it to Dart on Discord that I think it's not productive. I say it to him right now again. And in regards of the episode that made us distance from each other, I think I will not do what you did, Dart. And I will just not discuss this here in public. If you have some disagreement with me, just reach out on me in private and we figure it out and settle it. But I don't think that dirty clothes should be washed in public.
That's a fair call. I think, I think everyone knows what I think of Darth. I think Darth has done more to promote atheism than a lot of atheists. He's great for the atheist cause because he makes a fool of himself
and he's nice.
time. And the way he rants and the way he carries on,
and the way he treats people, it's just. There's no need for that. You can have a disagreement with somebody, even an animated one, without being rude to people.
Anyway, I'm happy to take his super chat, so that's okay. I think
just to let me say something else on this. My intent is to have productive conversations with atheists, as you said, Chris. Even if we disagree, I want to build bridges and not walls.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good attitude to have, Otangelo.
That's a good attitude. It's yeah.
I think a lot of atheists could learn from that attitude, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Ain't that the truth?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's yelling doesn't always. And look, there's nothing wrong with having a debate. And we had. Did you see the debate last week with the? I'm going to guess that you don't believe the Earth is flat and there's a snake circling it, which is where atheists go when they die. Otangelo, I assume you don't believe that one.
I mean, there are some topics which are out there which I think are a total waste of time. One of those is flat Earth. The other. It's more to have fun, to rant and troll a little bit. But I mean, hey, what does it matter if someone believes that Titanic didn't sink? I mean, hey, that's just a waste of time.
At the end of the day, people can believe whatever they want. Well, look, I think we might wrap it up there. I'll be in Discord if anyone wants to come and say hello. I'll be there for probably a little bit. All are welcome. Do you want to just quickly throw the link in the chat again, someone?
I can. Is that?
Yeah, we can. If anyone wants to come and have a chat, we can go and have a chat and. Yeah, that's all good. Thanks everyone who's been watching. Sorry, I couldn't really keep up with the chat. It was going pretty quick, and obviously trying to have a conversation with Otangelo and sort of give him the respect of having the conversation. So I do apologise if anyone said hello to me and I missed it. Apologies straight away, but thank you everyone who did come and watch and check it out. Jay, as always, thank you for doing what you do in the background. Jen, thank you for coming and making me feel like completely inadequate when it comes to knowledge on science.
It wasn't that. It was just that you have your thing. I mean, I will talk about history, but I will defer to people who know more than I do. Same if the discussion is about biology, I'd rather have somebody in who knows what they're talking about. But if you're going to talk about maths and science, it's my thing.
That's it. But no, look. So and thank you, Otangelo. Thank you for coming and having a respectful conversation. I appreciate it. I know that obviously we didn't agree on everything. And that's okay. It's not every conversation has to be one where there's a winner and a loser and everyone's mind gets changed. I am going to have a look at those links you sent. I have had a sort of brief read through. Obviously, there was the one we spoke about. I had a quick look at the genealogy one as well, which went the way I thought it was going to go. So I'm more than happy. I'll probably need to get a few more videos out. So I'll have a look and I'll give it a response. But look, thank you everyone for coming along. Wherever you are, everyone, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. And I guess I'll see some of you over in Discord. Catch you all later.
Bye.
Be water, my friends.